The church was packed, every pew filled with faces I'd known for years. Some were neighbors from Willow Lane, others were old friends from the garden club, and a few were Harlan's buddies from his days as a park ranger. There were even a couple of his old fishing pals, men with sunburned faces and hands rough from years of tying knots and baiting hooks. They all came to say goodbye to Harlan Whitaker, the man who could name every tree in the Blue Ridge Mountains and who never met a stranger. If you're watching this, I hope you'll stay with me until the end. Let me know where you're watching from. Maybe you've been through something like this too. Maybe you know what it's like to feel invisible, even in your own family. This is my story, and I promise, it's not over yet. I sat in the front row, my hands twisting a tissue, until it was nothing but shreds. The pastor spoke about Harlan's kindness, his love for the outdoors, and his devotion to family. I tried to listen, but my mind kept drifting back through the years. 48 years. That's how long Harlan and I were married. We met at a summer picnic in 1972, right here in Asheville. He was tall and sunburned, with a crooked smile and a laugh that made everyone else laugh too. He asked if I wanted to walk with him down by the river, and I said yes. We never really stopped walking together after that. We built a life in our little craftsman house on Willow Lane. We raised Gideon there, planted a garden, and watched the seasons change year after year. Harlan loved his job as a park ranger. He'd come home with stories about lost hikers, wildflowers blooming in hidden meadows, and the time he rescued a baby deer tangled in a fence. He always smelled like pine needles and sunshine. Even after he retired, he'd spend his days outside, tending the yard or taking long walks in the woods behind our house. Now, sitting in that church, I felt like I was fading into the background. People came up to me, their faces blurred by tears and time. "He was a good man, Marlene," they'd say. "He'll be missed." I nodded, thanked them, tried to smile, but it all felt so far away, like I was watching it happen to someone else. I felt invisible, like a ghost in my own life. Gideon sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder. He tried to be strong, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He kept glancing at his phone, probably checking on their son, little Theo, who was home with a sitter. Gideon had always been a good boy, thoughtful and gentle, but lately he seemed pulled in 100 directions. Work, family, bills, and now this, losing his father. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him, but I didn't have the strength. Cressida, on the other hand, was the picture of control. She moved through the crowd with a clipboard in her hand, making sure the food was set up, the flowers were arranged just so, and everyone knew where to go. She hugged people, smiled politely, and thanked them for coming. But her eyes were cold, her voice clipped. She never looked at me for more than a second. I could feel her impatience, like she was counting down the minutes until she could get back to her real life. After the service, I tried to slip away. I needed a moment to breathe, to remember Harlan in my own way. I found a small side room off the main hallway, a quiet space with a couple of old armchairs and a window looking out over the churchyard. I sat down, closed my eyes, and let the silence wrap around me. For a moment, I could almost hear Harlan's voice, soft and steady, telling me everything would be all right. But the peace didn't last. I heard footsteps in the hallway, then voices, Cressida and Gideon. I shrank back into the chair, not wanting to be seen, but unable to move. Cressida's voice was low, but I could hear every word. "We need to get things moving, Gideon. The house is too much for her. She can't keep up with it, and you know it. We should talk to the lawyer as soon as possible." Gideon sounded tired. "Mom's still grieving, Cressida. Can't we give her a little time?" Cressida sighed, the sound sharp as a knife. "Time for what? To let the place fall apart? We have to think about what's best for everyone. You know how much work that house needs. And what about Theo? We could use the extra space, and the money would help with his college fund." I felt my heart pounding in my chest. They were talking about my home, the place where I'd lived for nearly 50 years, the place where Harlan and I built our life together. I wanted to stand up, to tell them to stop, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, listening, my hands shaking. Gideon tried again. Let's just wait until after the will is read. Dad said he made arrangements for Mom. Maybe he left something for her. Cressida's voice was cold. Arrangements or not, she can't stay there alone. It's not safe, and we can't keep putting our lives on hold. They moved away, their voices fading down the hall. I sat there for a long time, staring out the window at the old oak tree in the churchyard. I felt small, like a child again, powerless and alone. But underneath the fear and sadness, something else was growing. A stubborn spark of anger. I wasn't ready to be pushed aside. Not yet. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and straightened my shoulders. I would face whatever came next, just like Harlan always did. One step at a time. The drive home from the church felt longer than usual, even though it was only a few miles. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and the mountains in the distance looked like they were holding their breath. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there for a moment, staring at the house, our house, the Craftsman on Willow Lane, with the blue shutters and the porch swing. Harlan hung himself the summer after Gideon was born. I could almost see Harlan standing on the porch, waving at me to hurry up and come inside before my coffee got cold. I could almost hear his laugh, deep and warm, echoing through the yard. But the porch was empty now, and the only sound was the wind rustling through the dogwood tree we planted on our 25th anniversary. I took a deep breath and got out of the car, my knees aching a little more than usual. The front steps creaked under my weight, just like they always did. I paused at the door, running my hand over the faded paint. Harlan always said he'd get around to repainting it, but somehow there was always something more important to do. I smiled a little at the memory, then pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. I set my purse on the hall table and looked around. The living room was just as we'd left it. Harlan's old recliner by the window, the Afghan I knitted draped over the back, the bookshelf crammed with paperbacks and field guides. On the mantel, a row of family photos. Gideon as a baby, Harlan in his ranger uniform, the three of us at the Grand Canyon, all sunburned and smiling. I wandered into the kitchen, where the smell of coffee still lingered from that morning. The table was covered with sympathy cards and half-empty casserole dishes from neighbors. I picked up a card from Mrs. Tinsley next door. She'd written, "If you need anything, I'm just a holler away." I smiled, remembering all the times she'd come over with a pie or a story to share. The kitchen was where so much of our life happened. I could see Harlan at the stove, making his famous blueberry pancakes on Saturday mornings. I remembered Gideon sitting at the table, legs swinging, telling us about his day at school. I remembered the laughter, the arguments, the quiet moments when it was just me and Harlan, sipping coffee and watching the sun come up over the mountains. I walked through the house, touching the things that made it ours. The quilt on our bed, stitched together from scraps of old shirts and dresses. The row of mason jars on the windowsill, filled with wildflowers, Harlan picked for me every spring. The muddy boots by the back door, still caked with dirt from his last walk in the woods. Every room held a memory. The study, where Harlan kept his maps and bird books. The guest room, where Juniper slept when she visited. The little sunroom at the back, where I grew tomatoes and basil in pots, and where Harlan liked to sit and read the paper. I ended up in the backyard, standing by the garden. The tomatoes were just starting to ripen, and the marigolds we planted together were in full bloom. I knelt down and pulled a few weeds, just like I'd done 1,000 times before. The earth felt cool and steady beneath my hands. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me. Gideon running through the sprinkler, Harlan grilling burgers for the whole neighborhood. The sound of laughter and music drifting through the summer air. The house felt empty without Harlan, but it was still full of him. Every corner, every creak, every faded photograph was a piece of our life together. I knew Cressida thought it was too much for me, that I should move somewhere smaller, easier, but I couldn't imagine leaving. This house was my anchor, my comfort, my history. As I stood up to go back inside, I noticed something tucked into the mailbox by the front door. It was a small envelope, my name written on it in Harlan's careful handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a note, short and simple, but it felt like Harlan was right there beside me. Marlene, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry for that. I want you to know I've made arrangements to take care of you. Don't let anyone rush you into anything you're not ready for. This house is yours as long as you want it. I love you always. H. I pressed the note to my chest and let the tears come. I missed him so much it hurt, but reading his words gave me a little bit of strength. Harlan had always looked out for me, and even now he was still doing it. I sat on the porch swing as the sun started to set, the sky turning pink and gold over the mountains. I rocked back and forth, holding Harlan's note, and listened to the quiet. The house on Willow Lane was more than just a building. It was my home, my safe place, and I wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet, maybe not ever. The next morning, I was still in my robe, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, when I heard a car door slam out front. I peeked through the window and saw Cressida's silver SUV in the driveway. She was already halfway up the walk, balancing a casserole dish in one hand and a stack of glossy brochures in the other. I braced myself. I knew this visit wasn't just about being neighborly. She knocked, then let herself in before I could answer. "Marlene, good morning," she called, her voice too bright. "I brought you my famous chicken and wild rice casserole. I know it's hard to cook for one." I managed a polite smile. "Thank you, Cressida. That's thoughtful." I took the casserole and set it on the counter, noticing she was already scanning the kitchen, her eyes landing on the stack of mail, the half-finished crossword, the crumbs on the table. She set her brochures down and started straightening things, moving my salt and pepper shakers, stacking the mail, wiping a spot on the counter with her sleeve. She didn't sit down. Instead, she fanned out the brochures on the table, all of them showing smiling seniors in spotless apartments, playing cards, swimming, eating in fancy dining rooms. "I thought you might want to look at some options," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "There are some wonderful communities nearby. They have activities, meals, even transportation. You wouldn't have to worry about anything." I looked at the pictures, then back at her. "I appreciate it, but I'm not ready to leave my home, Cressida. I've managed just fine here for a long time." She gave me a tight smile. "Of course, but it's a lot to keep up with. The yard, the stairs, the repairs, and you'd have people around all the time. You wouldn't be alone." I could feel my patience slipping. "I'm not alone. I have neighbors, friends, and Juniper comes by all the time." She sighed, glancing at her watch. "I just want what's best for you, Marlene. And for Gideon and Theo too. We all worry about you here by yourself." I could hear the impatience in her voice, the way she said, "here by yourself," like it was a crime. I knew she meant well, or at least she thought she did, but it felt like she was trying to pack up my life and move it somewhere more convenient for her. Just then, Gideon came in through the back door, carrying a bag of groceries. He looked tired, his hair a mess, but he smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Mom, brought you some milk and bread." Cressida turned to him, her voice softening. "I was just showing your mom some senior living options. I think it's time we start planning." Gideon set the groceries down and rubbed the back of his neck. "Let's not rush her, Cressida. Dad just passed. She needs time." Cressida's lips pressed into a thin line. "Time is fine, but we can't ignore reality. The house is a lot for one person." I watched my son, torn between his wife and his mother. He wanted to do right by both of us, but I could see the strain in his eyes. I wanted to tell him not to worry, that I'd be fine, but I also wanted him to stand up for me. Cressida gathered her things, her smile back in place. "Just think about it, Marlene. I'll leave these here for you." She tapped the brochures and headed for the door. "We'll talk soon." As soon as she was gone, Gideon let out a long breath. Sorry, Mom. She means well, but she gets intense. I shrugged. She's got her own way of doing things. I just wish she'd listen to what I want. He nodded, looking down at his shoes. I'll talk to her, I promise. Before I could say more, the front door opened again, and in came Juniper, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair in a messy bun. She was a burst of energy, all smiles and hugs. Grandma, I brought you some cookies from the bakery, and I can stay for a while if you want. I hugged her tight, feeling some of the heaviness lift. You always know just when to show up. She grinned. Mom and Dad are arguing again, so I figured I'd escape here. Plus, I wanted to check on you. We sat at the kitchen table, eating cookies and talking about everything and nothing. Juniper told me about her art project, her plans for college, and the latest drama at school. She made me laugh, and for a little while, I forgot about casseroles and brochures and all the things I was supposed to worry about. After a while, she looked at me, serious. Grandma, you're not really thinking about moving, are you? I shook my head. Not if I can help it. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Good, because this house is home. For all of us. I felt tears prick my eyes. But this time they were happy tears. I wasn't alone, not really. As long as I had Juniper and memories of Harlan and a little bit of fight left in me, I could face whatever came next. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat on the porch swing and watched the fireflies blink in the yard. The brochures were still on the kitchen table, but I didn't open them. I wasn't ready to give up my home, my memories, or my independence. Not for a casserole, not for anyone's idea of what was best. I was still here, and I wasn't done fighting for my life on Willow Lane. A few days after the funeral, I got a call from Mr. Ellison, our family lawyer. He was an old friend of Harlan's, a quiet man with a gentle voice and a habit of polishing his glasses when he was thinking. He asked if I could come by his office that Friday morning. It's time to go over Harlan's will, he said softly. Bring Gideon and Cressida, if you can. I barely slept the night before. I kept thinking about Harlan's note, the one I'd found in the mailbox. I've made arrangements to take care of you. What did that mean, exactly? I tried not to worry, but my mind kept spinning. I knew Cressida would be there, and I could already imagine her tapping her foot, ready to get things moving. Friday morning was gray and drizzly. I put on my best navy dress and a string of pearls Harlan gave me for our 40th anniversary. Gideon picked me up, and we drove in silence to Mr. Ellison's office, a little brick building downtown, with a faded sign out front. Cressida was already there, sitting in the waiting room, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up when we walked in. Mr. Ellison greeted us with a sad smile. Marlene, Gideon, Cressida, please, come in. His office smelled like old books and lemon polish. We sat around a big oak table, the kind that looked like it had seen 100 family meetings, just like this one. He opened a thick folder and cleared his throat. First, let me say how sorry I am for your loss. Harlan was a good man and a good friend. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. He looked at me. Harlan updated his will about 3 months ago. He wanted to make sure everything was in order. Cressida leaned forward, her eyes sharp. So what does it say? Mr. Ellison adjusted his glasses. The house on Willow Lane goes to Marlene, with full rights to live there as long as she wishes. No one can force her to leave, sell, or move unless she chooses to do so herself. Cressida's mouth fell open. But what if she can't take care of it? What if she needs more help? Mr. Ellison shook his head. Harlan was very clear. Marlene's right to stay is protected. If, and only if, 2 independent doctors agree she can't live there safely, then the house can be sold. Until then, it's hers. Gideon looked at me, surprise and relief on his face. Dad really thought of everything. Cressida, on the other hand, was not happy. She crossed her arms and stared at the table. That's not practical. What about the rest of the estate? Mr. Ellison continued. The savings and investments are divided between Marlene and Gideon. There's also a small trust set aside for home repairs and help around the house. should Marlene need it. Harlan wanted to make sure she could stay independent. I felt a wave of gratitude and sadness all at once. Harlan had always been the planner, the one who thought ahead. Even now he was looking out for me. Mr. Ellison reached into the folder and pulled out 3 envelopes. Harlan left letters for each of you. I'll give you a moment to read them. He handed me an envelope with my name on it, written in Harlan's neat, careful handwriting. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, just a page, but it felt like Harlan was sitting right beside me. My dearest Marlene, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I wish I could hold your hand one more time. I know you're strong, even when you don't feel like it. I wanted to make sure you could stay in our home as long as you want. Don't let anyone rush you or make you feel like a burden. You are my heart, and this house is yours. I hope you'll fill it with laughter and memories for many more years. If you ever feel lonely, remember I'm with you in every sunrise, every bird at the feeder, every breeze through the garden. I love you always. Harlan. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears running down my cheeks. I could almost hear his voice, gentle and steady, telling me everything would be all right. Gideon read his letter quietly, his eyes shining. Cressida opened hers, but I could see her jaw tighten as she read. She folded it up quickly and shoved it in her purse. Mr. Ellison gave us a few minutes, then cleared his throat. Are there any questions? Cressida spoke up, her voice tight. So there's nothing we can do if Marlene refuses to move. Mr. Ellison shook his head. Not unless her doctors say she can't live there safely. Harlan wanted to protect her independence. Cressida looked at Gideon, frustration written all over her face. This isn't fair. We have our own family to think about. Gideon put his hand on my shoulder. Mom's family too. Dad wanted her to be safe and happy. I looked at my son, grateful for his support. Thank you, Gideon. That means a lot. We left the office together, the rain still falling softly. Cressida walked ahead, her heels clicking on the sidewalk. Gideon offered me his arm, and I took it, feeling steadier than I had in days. When we got home, I sat at the kitchen table and read Harlan's letter again. I traced his signature with my finger, remembering all the times he'd signed birthday cards, notes, and grocery lists. I missed him so much, but I felt his love wrapped around me like a warm blanket. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the rain. The house felt different now, still empty, but also safe. Harlan had given me a gift, one I would never take for granted. I was home, and I was going to fight to keep it that way. The days after the will reading felt like walking on eggshells. Cressida was more determined than ever, and I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to slip up. She started dropping by the house more often, always with a reason, bringing groceries, checking on the garden, or just making sure I was all right. But it never felt like kindness. It felt like she was looking for proof that I couldn't manage on my own. One afternoon, I was in the backyard, pulling weeds from the flower beds, when Cressida showed up unannounced. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, her lips pressed tight. Marlene, you shouldn't be out here alone. What if you fall? What if you forget to lock the door or leave the stove on? I wiped my hands on my jeans and tried to keep my voice steady. I've been taking care of this house for almost 50 years, Cressida. I know what I'm doing. She shook her head, not listening. You left the porch light on all night last week, and you called Juniper twice in one day because you forgot she was coming over. I'm just worried, that's all. I wanted to tell her that grief makes you forgetful, not old age, but I knew she wouldn't hear it. She was already convinced I was slipping. Later that week, she brought up the brochures again, spreading them out on the kitchen table while I was making tea. Just look at these, Marlene. They have everything you need, meals, activities, even a shuttle to the grocery store. You'd be safer, and we'd all have peace of mind. I looked at the smiling faces in the pictures, all those strangers in matching polo shirts, and felt a wave of sadness. This is my home, I said quietly. I'm not ready to leave. Cressida sighed, gathering up the brochures. You're being stubborn. Gideon and I just want what's best for you." That night, I called my doctor, Dr. Lila Monroe. She'd been my doctor for years, and I trusted her. I told her about Cressida's concerns, about the pressure I was feeling. Dr. Monroe listened patiently, then said, "Marlene, you're in good health. Your memory is sharp, your blood pressure is better than mine, and you're more active than most women your age. I see no reason you can't keep living at home. If you want, I can put that in writing." Relief washed over me. "Would you? I think it would help." "Of course," she said. "And if you ever need help, you know you can call me." A few days later, Juniper came by after school, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She found me in the kitchen, reading Dr. Monroe's letter for the third time. "Grandma, what's wrong?" she asked, dropping her bag on a chair. I handed her the letter. "Your mom thinks I can't live here alone. She wants me to move." Juniper read the letter, then looked up, her eyes fierce. "That's ridiculous. You're the most independent person I know." I smiled, feeling a little lighter. "Thank you, honey. But your mom's not giving up." Juniper sat down beside me. "I have an idea. After I graduate, I could move in with you. I'll be going to community college in town, and I could help out around the house. That way, Mom can't say you're alone." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's a sweet offer, Juniper, but I don't want you to give up your college experience for me." She shrugged. "I'd rather be here than in a dorm. And besides, I like it here. It feels like home." The thought of having Juniper around made me feel hopeful. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought, but things between Cressida and Gideon were getting worse. I could hear them arguing in the hallway when they thought I wasn't listening. One night, after dinner, Gideon stayed behind while Cressida took Theo home. He sat at the kitchen table, rubbing his temples. "Mom, I'm sorry about all this. She's worried. She thinks she's doing the right thing." I poured him a cup of coffee and sat down across from him. "I know she means well, but I need you to stand up for me, Gideon. This is my home. Your father wanted me to stay here, and so do I." He nodded, looking tired. "I'll talk to her again." I promise. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you, son. That's all I ask." That night, I sat on the porch swing, watching the stars come out one by one. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. I thought about Harlan, about Juniper, about all the years I'd spent making this place a home. I wasn't ready to give it up, not for Cressida, not for anyone. The pressure was mounting, but so was my resolve. I was still here, and I was going to fight for my life on Willow Lane, no matter what. The next week, I decided I needed a plan. I wasn't going to let Cressida push me out of my own home, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I needed proof that I could live here safely, and I needed people on my side. So I called my neighbor, Mrs. Tinsley. Mrs. Tinsley had lived next door for as long as I could remember. She was a spry 82, with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She still drove her old Buick to the grocery store every Tuesday and never missed a Sunday at church. When I told her what was going on, she shook her head and patted my hand. "Marlene, you let me know if you need anything. I can check on you every day, and if you ever need help, I'm right next door. Don't let that daughter-in-law of yours bully you." Her words made me feel stronger. I knew I could count on her. Next, I called Rosa, a home care nurse who sometimes helped Mrs. Tinsley after her hip surgery. Rosa was in her 50s, with a warm smile and a no-nonsense attitude. She came by the house one afternoon, clipboard in hand, and walked through every room with me. "We can make a few changes," she said, jotting notes. "Grab bars in the bathroom, better lighting in the hallway, maybe a medical alert button just in case. You're in good shape, Marlene, but it never hurts to be prepared." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you, Rosa. I just want to show everyone I can do this." She smiled. "You're doing the right thing. And if you ever need help, you call me. I'll check in on you, too." With Mrs. Tinsley and Rosa on my team, I felt like I could breathe again. I started making a list of things to do. Call the handyman about the grab bars, order a brighter lamp for the hallway, and look into a medical alert system. It felt good to take action, to have a plan. But Cressida wasn't giving up. She started calling other family members, her sister in Raleigh, her cousin in Charlotte, even Gideon's aunt in Florida. I heard her on the phone, telling them I was struggling and forgetful, that the house was too much for me. She wanted them to talk to Gideon, to convince him that moving me was the right thing to do. One afternoon, I got a call from Aunt Ruth in Florida. "Marlene, honey, are you sure you're all right up there by yourself? Cressida says you've been having trouble." I took a deep breath and explained everything. About the doctor's letter, the home modifications, and Juniper's offer to move in. Aunt Ruth listened, then laughed. "Sounds to me like you've got it all under control. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Still, it hurt to know Cressida was painting me as helpless. I tried not to let it get to me, but some nights I lay awake, wondering if people really thought I was losing my mind. Thankfully, I had my church friends and my book club. Every Wednesday we met in the church basement for coffee and cookies. When I told them what was happening, they rallied around me. "You're not alone, Marlene," said Betty, who'd known me since Gideon was in diapers. "If you need rides to the store or someone to check in, just say the word. We can take turns bringing you meals," offered Linda, who made the best banana bread in Asheville. "And if you ever want company, you know where to find us." Their support meant the world to me. It reminded me that I was part of a community, that I had people who cared about me and wanted me to stay. My book club was just as supportive. We met every other Friday in my living room, surrounded by stacks of novels and mugs of tea. We talked about everything: books, grandkids, aches and pains, and now my battle to stay in my home. "You're braver than you think, Marlene," said Joyce, handing me a slice of lemon cake. "Don't let anyone push you around." With all these women behind me, I felt stronger than ever. I started to believe I could really do this, that I could stay in my home, on my own terms. But the tension in the family was growing. Gideon was caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace. Cressida was more distant than ever, barely speaking to me when she dropped off Theo. I could see the worry in Gideon's eyes, the way he looked at me like he was afraid I'd break. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat on the porch swing and watched the sun set behind the mountains. The air was cool, and the sky was streaked with pink and gold. I thought about Harlan, about all the years we'd spent in this house, about the friends and neighbors who had become my family. I wasn't alone. I had allies, real friends who believed in me. And I had adversaries too, but I was ready for them. I was stronger than I looked, and I wasn't going anywhere. As the first stars appeared in the sky, I made a promise to myself. I would fight for my home, for my independence, and for the life I'd built on Willow Lane. No matter what came next, I was ready. It was a Saturday afternoon when Gideon called and said, "Mom, we need to have a family meeting. Cressida wants to talk things through." I could hear the tension in his voice, and my stomach twisted into knots. I knew what this was about. I spent the morning tidying up, making a fresh pot of coffee, and setting out a plate of oatmeal cookies. I wanted to show everyone that I was still perfectly capable of running my own home. Cressida arrived first, her lips pressed tight and her arms full of folders and papers. She barely glanced at the cookies. Gideon came in behind her, looking tired and worried. Juniper showed up last, dropping her backpack by the door and giving me a quick hug before sitting at the table. We all sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. Cressida cleared her throat and started, "Marlene, we're here because we care about you. We want to make sure you're safe and comfortable. This house is a lot for one person, and we think it's time to consider other options." I folded my hands in my lap and looked at her. "I appreciate your concern, Cressida, but I've already made arrangements. I've talked to Dr. Monroe, and she says I'm healthy and independent. Rosa and Mrs. Tinsley are helping me with a plan to make the house safer. And Juniper has offered to move in after graduation." Cressida's eyes narrowed. "That's not enough. You're still alone most of the time. What if something happens? What if you fall or forget to take your medicine?" Before I could answer, Juniper spoke up, her voice clear and strong. Mom, Grandma is not helpless. She's the most stubborn, independent person I know. And you're not worried about her. You're worried about the house and the money. Cressida's face turned red. That's not true. I just want what's best for everyone. Juniper shook her head. No, you want what's easiest for you. You want to sell the house and use the money for yourself. You've been talking to Aunt Ruth and everyone else, trying to get them on your side. Gideon looked from Juniper to Cressida, his face pale. Is that true? Cressida, have you been calling people behind my back? Cressida's voice wavered. I was just trying to get some advice. I thought if everyone agreed, it would be easier to convince your mother. Gideon sighed, rubbing his forehead. This isn't about what's easy, it's about what's right. Dad wanted Mom to stay here as long as she wanted. That's what the will says. Cressida glared at him. So you're just going to let her risk her health? What if something happens and you're not here? I took a deep breath and sat up straighter. My hands stopped shaking. Cressida, I know you think you're helping, but this is my life. I've lived here for almost 50 years. I know every creak in the floor, every draft in the window. I'm not ready to leave, and I'm not going to be bullied into it. Juniper reached over and squeezed my hand. I'll be here, Grandma. You're not alone. Gideon looked at me, then at Cressida. I'm with Mom on this. If she wants to stay, she stays. We'll make it work. Cressida stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. I can't believe you're choosing her over your own family. Gideon shook his head. She is my family, and so are you. But this isn't about choosing sides. It's about respecting what Dad wanted and what Mom needs. The room was silent for a long moment. I could feel my heart pounding, but I also felt a sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a voice. I stood up and looked at each of them. I love you all, but I'm not leaving my home. I've made a plan, I have support, and I'm not afraid. If you can't accept that, then that's your problem, not mine. Cressida gathered her things, her hands shaking. Fine, but don't come running to me when you need help. I watched her go, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. Gideon came over and hugged me. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have stood up for you sooner. I hugged him back. It's all right, son. I know this isn't easy for you. Juniper grinned. You were amazing, Grandma. I'm proud of you. We sat together for a while, drinking coffee and talking about the future. The house felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but I also knew I wasn't alone. I had my family, my friends, and most importantly, I had myself. That night, as I got ready for bed, I looked around my room and smiled. I was home, and I was here to stay. The Monday after our family meeting, I got a call from Mr. Ellison's office. He wanted to see me, Gideon, and Cressida together. I could tell by his voice that this wasn't just a routine check-in. I called Gideon, and he agreed to pick me up. Cressida, he said, would meet us there. The drive downtown was quiet. Gideon kept glancing at me, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I just patted his hand and told him, "We'll get through this, son, one way or another." When we arrived, Cressida was already in the waiting room, tapping her foot and scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up as we walked in. Mr. Ellison greeted us and led us into his office, where the same thick folder from before sat on his desk. He cleared his throat and looked at each of us. "I wanted to bring you all together to clarify the legal situation regarding Harlan's will. There seems to be some confusion, and I think it's best we're all on the same page." Cressida sat up straighter. "I just want what's best for Marlene. But this house is too much for her. She's not safe here alone." Mr. Ellison nodded politely, but his voice was firm. "Cressida, I understand your concerns, but Harlan's will is very clear. Marlene has the right to remain in her home for as long as she wishes, unless two independent doctors agree she can no longer live here safely. If anyone pressures her to leave, or if she is forced out against her will, the house will not go to Gideon or your family. Instead, it will be sold and the proceeds donated to the Asheville Land Trust, as Harlan specified." Cressida's mouth dropped open. "What? That's not fair. We're family. Why would he do that? Mr. Ellison looked at her over his glasses. Harlan wanted to protect Marlene's independence. He saw what can happen when families disagree about these things. He made sure there were safeguards in place. Gideon looked at me, his face full of regret. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know Dad put that in the will. I should have listened to you from the start. I squeezed his hand. It's all right, Gideon. I know you were trying to keep the peace. Cressida was still fuming. So if she stays, we get the house someday. But if we push her out, we lose everything. Mr. Ellison nodded. That's correct. And I have to warn you, Marlene has already taken steps to document her health and her wishes. If there's any sign of pressure or manipulation, it could be grounds for the house to go straight to the land trust. Cressida slumped back in her chair, defeated. I can't believe this. All that work, all those calls, for nothing. Gideon turned to her, his voice gentle but firm. Cressida, this isn't about the house. It's about Mom. She deserves to live where she's happy. Dad wanted that for her, and so do I. For a long moment, no one spoke. I could see the wheels turning in Cressida's mind. But she finally just shook her head and looked away. Mr. Ellison closed the folder and smiled at me. Marlene, you have every right to stay in your home. If you ever need anything, you know where to find me. We left the office together, the three of us walking out into the bright Asheville sunshine. Cressida hurried ahead, her heels clicking on the sidewalk. Gideon and I walked more slowly. He stopped at the corner and turned to me. Mom, I really am sorry. I let things get out of hand. I should have stood up for you sooner. I put my arm around him. You're here now, and that's what matters. We all make mistakes, Gideon. What counts is what we do next. He smiled, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the boy I'd raised, the one who used to bring me wildflowers and ask a million questions about the world. I want to make it up to you, Mom. I want to be around more. Maybe we can have dinner together once a week, just the two of us. My heart swelled. I'd like that very much. When we got home, Cressida went straight to the guest room and closed the door. Gideon helped me bring in the groceries, and we put them away together, chatting about little things, Juniper's art show, the tomatoes in the garden, the weather. It felt easy, like old times. That evening, after Gideon and Cressida left, I sat on the porch swing and watched the sun dip behind the mountains. The air was cool and sweet, and I felt lighter than I had in months. The fight wasn't over, but the worst of it was behind me. I had my home, my independence, and most importantly, I had my son back. Later, Juniper called. Grandma, how did it go? I smiled into the phone. It went just fine, honey. Your grandpa made sure I'd be all right. And your dad's coming over for dinner next week. She cheered. That's awesome. I'll bake a pie. I laughed, feeling hope bloom in my chest. For the first time since Harlan passed, I truly believed everything was going to be okay. I was still here, still standing, and I wasn't going anywhere. The summer after all the drama, the house on Willow Lane felt different. Not empty, not heavy, but alive again. Juniper moved in the week after her high school graduation. She arrived with 2 suitcases, a box of art supplies, and a big smile. I hope you're ready for some company, Grandma, she said, hugging me tight. I was more than ready. The first night, we made spaghetti and garlic bread, then stayed up late, watching old movies and laughing until our sides hurt. Juniper filled the house with music, painting supplies, and the smell of her favorite vanilla candles. She hung her artwork in the hallway and set up a little studio in the sunroom. Every morning I'd find her sketching at the kitchen table, a mug of tea by her elbow. Having her there changed everything. The house felt young again. We cooked together, worked in the garden, and took long walks in the neighborhood. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch swing and talk about Harlan, her grandpa, and all the stories he used to tell. Juniper asked questions about my childhood, about how I met Harlan, about what Asheville was like when I was her age. I loved sharing those memories, and I loved hearing about her dreams for the future. One afternoon, Juniper came home, waving a flyer. "Look, Grandma, there's an art class at the community center. You should come with me. It's for all ages." I hesitated at first. I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in years, not since Gideon was little. But Juniper wouldn't take no for an answer. "It'll be fun, and you need to get out more." So, I went. The first class was a little awkward. I was the oldest person there by a good 20 years, but everyone was friendly. The teacher, a cheerful woman named Miss Carla, encouraged us to paint whatever made us happy. I painted the dogwood tree in our front yard, the one Harlan and I planted together. When I finished, Juniper grinned and said, "See, you're a natural." The art class became our weekly ritual. We'd walk to the community center together, paint for an hour, then treat ourselves to ice cream on the way home. I made new friends, too, other women my age who loved to paint, garden, and gossip about the latest town news. Inspired by Juniper's energy, I decided to do more. I signed up to volunteer at the Asheville Botanical Gardens. Every Thursday morning, I'd pull on my gardening gloves and help weed the flower beds, plant new shrubs, or guide visitors through the walking trails. The fresh air and sunshine did me good, and I loved being surrounded by people who cared about the same things I did. Meanwhile, things with Cressida changed. After the meeting with Mr. Ellison, she kept her distance. She stopped calling and only came by if she absolutely had to. At first, I felt a little sad about it. I never wanted to push her away, but I also knew I had to stand my ground. Sometimes, you have to let people go their own way. Gideon, on the other hand, started coming around more often. He'd stop by after work to check on the garden, or bring over a bag of groceries. Sometimes he'd stay for dinner, and we'd sit on the porch talking about everything and nothing. He apologized again for not standing up for me sooner, but I told him we were moving forward, not backward. One Saturday, he brought Theo, my grandson, and we all spent the afternoon making homemade pizza and playing board games. The house was full of laughter, and I could almost feel Harlan smiling down on us. Juniper thrived too. She started college in the fall, commuting from home. She made new friends, joined the campus art club, and even sold a few of her paintings at a local craft fair. She still helped around the house, but I made sure she had her own life too. I wanted her to feel free, not tied down. We settled into a new routine. Mornings were quiet, with Juniper off to class and me tending the garden or volunteering. Afternoons were for painting, reading, or baking something sweet. Evenings, we'd cook dinner together, then sit on the porch swing and watch the fireflies. Sometimes, I'd catch myself thinking about how close I came to losing all of this. If I'd let Cressida push me out, I would have missed these moments. Juniper's laughter, Gideon's visits, the peace of my own home. I was grateful every day for Harlan's foresight, for my friends and neighbors, and for the stubborn streak that kept me fighting. One evening, as the leaves started to turn gold and red, Juniper and I sat on the porch, sipping hot cider. She looked at me and said, "Grandma, I'm glad we did this. I feel like I really know you now." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest. "I'm glad too, honey. You've brought so much life back into this house." She grinned. "And you've taught me how to make the best biscuits in Asheville." We both laughed, and I thought about how life can surprise you. Even after loss, even after heartache, there are new beginnings. New roots can grow, even in old soil. As the sun set behind the mountains, I felt at peace. My house was still my home, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of more memories to come. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I wasn't facing them alone. With Juniper by my side, and my family close, I was ready for whatever came next. A year has passed since that long, hard summer. The house on Willow Lane is still my home, and it's filled with laughter, art, and the smell of fresh biscuits. Juniper is thriving in college, and Gideon visits every week. Even Cressida, though still distant, sometimes sends a card or a quick text. Life isn't perfect, but it's real, and it's mine. This morning, I drove out to the old cemetery on the edge of town. I brought a bouquet of wildflowers, Harlan's favorite, and sat by his grave for a while. I told him about Juniper's art show, about the tomatoes in the garden, about how I'm still here, still strong. I thanked him for loving me enough to protect my independence, even after he was gone. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown. I was scared, I was angry, but I found my voice. I learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to start something new, or to let people in. We may bend, but we don't break. If you're watching this, I hope my story gives you hope too. Maybe you're facing your own battles, or maybe you know someone who is. Please share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Let's support each other, because none of us are truly alone. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to me, and it helps more people find these stories of strength and hope. Thank you for being here.